As of this review, we're going to do Victor Milan's sequel to his new trilogy, the Dinosaur Knights, the sequel to the Dinosaur Lords. He was published a year before. So, I already did the first book. Let's start with the second one. As we left off, there's a battle starting to rise up. The Empire is now raising an army to go out against this one group of people in the city of Providence. And there's a lot of irony here going on here. The main leader of this army, Jame, is the man who wrote whose principles and philosophies of love and peacefulness. It's his principles that are the basis of the city, Providence, which is now viewed by the Church of the Empire as a heretic group. So there's that, and there's also the fact that Providence, being a peaceful and pacifist town, needs defense against these enemies that are going out to attack them. There's this cruel warlord and his servants are trying to rampage the area since, hey, they can't fight back, what have you, we'll take what we want. They're a heretic group anyway. And so they are now, so what Providence is, hired two guys, this is back in the first book, Carl, who's this great general, and Rob, who is now serving as his right-hand man. He's a bard, he's a rogue, likes wine and drink and so forth like that. So in the first book, they got into a major battle, and they nearly lost, and then in the second book they were now put on trial to see whether they're worth salvaging or get rid of them. And of course they were let go. So now they're going to continue, and their army's now growing, and they even got new beasts of burden, like these group of Triceratops to help aid in battle. And then from the Empire, Melodia, who's a princess and the daughter of the Emperor, she is now viewed as a traitor to the Emperor, who is her father, and thanks to a guy named Falk, and she is now with her companion, Pilar, I believe her name was. They're off to go to Providence and seek refuge there. With that, it was so she's a young, naive girl. She kind of presents herself to be in the first book, and even more so in the second book. When she goes to Providence, she loves it there. Everyone treats her well, except she doesn't like the idea that they're raising this army, even though they're there for the protection of Providence. And so she figures, underneath the principles of her new home and the philosophies, she can go up to this this enemy that's attacking him and negotiate peace and what have you, which all went south so fast. And gets her companion killed, and then later she becomes and joins the army, Carl's army in defense of Providence. She's going to try it the other way around. She understands she's young and naive. She's going to try or understand it from the other perspective. So there's that aspect. Now going back to the character of Falk, what's interesting about that, at least what's keeping me interested, is the fact he has this servant. It's kind of this goblin face, not an actual goblin, but his, not exactly a pretty guy who's trying to do his best to do everything he can to raise Falk's position. Apparently, Falk, his servant, who's helping Falk, Falk's mother is trying to do a lot of manipulating to make sure her son raises top. We don't know her mother. She's always talking on the sidelines. Looks like she's going to come in the third book. So we got that. Falk is the guy who sets up Melodia and abuses her, and now declares, has her father thinking she's a traitor. And while all this is going on, and the reason why the Imperials after Providence, because they not only declared them a heretic group, there's also sightings of the great angels, who are these servants of, the sons of the gods, who do their service, but the truth is they have ulterior motives. They do their own thing. And one of them is seen around Providence and starts wreaking havoc. And I won't get too far into details here. So that kind of sums up what's happening here, and everything else is just detailed, and then there's a climax. In the first book, one of the things that really struck me was a jousting contest with the knights on their dinosaurs. And despite the covers shown so far, you figure that they regularly write carnivorous animals. While they do, it is not that common. They would ride anything else. Mostly what you read about is knights on top of hadrosaurs, which have this really cool ability to where if they can emit this frequency of sound, that when if they have a whole lot of them and shoot them all in unison, it could do some damage to, could kill people, and could do damage to larger animals. So if I had to say that that there is a flaw in this book, that, well, not a deal breaker, I think kind of a missed opportunity here. The idea of this book is take a medieval fantasy style world, and instead of incorporating horses and such that we're normally used to, you replace it with dinosaurs. In this book here, Melodia leads a group of scouts and skirmishers on horseback. And so yeah, horses exist in this world, but I think there was some missed opportunity here. When you do something like this, one of the appeals of it like this is how war is different with a different set of animals. What level of technology you have, of course in this case lances, medieval style warfare, but when you add the dinosaurs and nothing, if you do that and stick with that, it has a whole new difference in the war. Let me give you something to put perspective of. Imagine Rome, Egypt, all those ancient cultures, even up to medieval times, all those battles in between without the horse. No animals to ride upon. Now you think about that. That would change the outlook, that would change how wars are won, because you're going to be relying on foot soldiers, and maybe the use of artilleries in different unique ways. Without horses, you have no chariots. And many cultures have relied on the chariot. The Celts relied on chariots. And that helped them, in their midst of battles. So if you do something like this, take out an element or add in an element, you can rewrite a different style of war. Tactics are thought differently based on, what animals you use. Since dinosaurs, like the hadrosaurs and even the meat eaters, are generally bigger, that's another thing about it. Once you add in the horse, you add in something that's already seen in every era fantasy, and I think you missed out on a unique experience of just replacing all the animals with dinosaurs. Not a deal breaker, but kind of a missed opportunity here. Yeah, he still has dinosaurs, and yeah, they're still in abundance. But once you put the horse in, it's like, I thought this world was just nothing but dinosaurs in it as regular animals and steeds. But it's the author's will; he wants to do it, do what he pleases. Another aspect about it is when, in particular, the character Melodia, the exiled princess, when she goes to decide from learning her mistake. From our naivete to negotiate peace with this man who doesn't care much for peace. He's going to roam down anyway. Then when she decides to join the army, it's kind of just like next chapter, she's already up in the ranks. She's already done it. She's, I feel like with that sort of gap, we don't need a very long deal when it comes. They could have just described it well. She joined the army and she joined in. Then they put her in this position. She in a certain amount of time she gained in this she get to this rank. I don't think he didn't really do that. Just so boom, she's now the leader of this group. She's done a very good job and skilled, which I could believe, but there was no build up to it. It's like there's no bridge transitioning that. I think that's not a deal breaker, but it's one of those things that keeps this series from being perfect. But there you go. That is, but again, for lacking in very little when it comes to putting dinosaurs in fantasies other than the usual fare of time travel and stuff like that, go ahead and give this series a shot. The Dinosaur Lords being the first book, and then you got the Dinosaur Knights being the second book. And at the rate this is going, he'll probably have the third book out in next year, or by the summer of next year, or maybe the year after that, because this is he's probably got a head start on all this. I would like to see where this series is going to go. I still want to, hopefully he'll explain the motives of the Grey Angels, who they had to face one in the second book, but they don't go too much into it. But they're, it leaves enough cliffhangers because even though it leads to a nice closing of events in this one, they are still unanswered questions that makes you want to say, okay, I'm ready for the third book. What is this going to offer? So I think it's, for what it is, for a fantasy trilogy where dinosaurs are incorporate into a medieval fantasy world. It's better than nothing. Not perfect, but better than nothing, and definitely I think it's worth your time. So go ahead, check these out. Thank you all for watching, and you have a nice day.